You know, I've made a lot of videos over the past year and change, and I've really been enjoying myself. Sure, none of my videos have necessarily broken YouTube, but that doesn't really matter for me. This is a fun hobby, and I'm happy with how far I've come as an editor, even if audio is still a spot that I need improvement on. That said, it has been a minute since I've talked about Pokémon, so maybe a video about that can be fun? Yeah, actually I think that could be fun. I think a video about some of my favorite Pokémon could be fun, and a way of continuing my trend of only making videos that I can be positive on. Now, so long as I keep it short and concise, and don't have it spiral out of control like my Pokémon X video, then I think this could be a really fun project.
He has risen, baby girl. Fuck!
And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand.
Pokémon is one of my favorite game series of all time. Not that you would be able to tell or anything. In my many years of gaming, Pokémon has consistently had some of the most varied and creative creature designs in anything I have ever seen. Now, they aren't all winners, I'll grant you that, but the highs of this series are incredibly high. Being that Pokémon is almost 30 years old, I wanted to take a look back on some of my favorite Pokémon from this series. However, if I just filled the list with my cherry-picked favorites, I feel like that would be a pretty lame and lopsided list. Some generations just flat out wouldn't have any Pokémon on the list. So, to accurately look back on the series, I will be covering one Pokémon of each type from each generation to make sure I give credit to each Pokédex and all that they have to offer. Yes, hi, Future Glass Bear here. I have now finished writing the script for this video. Funny story. Turns out if there are 18 types in Pokemon and 9 regions of Pokemon, it turns out 18 times 9 is equal to 162 Pokemon. Oh, this has officially spiraled way worse than my Pokemon X video, which is saying a lot. Why did I make me do this? I am losing my mind! The way that this list will go is that I will cover my favorite Pokemon of each type from each region, my favorite Pokemon of each region at the end, and at the end of the video overall, I will give a few general summary lists. For the sake of discussion, if a Pokemon has 2 types, like Charizard being fire and flying, that means that Charizard is good for either the fire or flying type, but not both. I will not be repeating any singular Pokemon for any singular region. That said, regional forms are absolutely on the table. So if I include Marowak, there's nothing stopping me from including a lowland Marowak, for instance. With the ground rules out of the way, let's discuss some Pokemon. For the first generation of Pokemon, a lot of these Pokemon are classics. While not all of them are amazing, overall, most of these Pokemon are still great in my opinion, even setting aside their veteran status. That said, a lot of my opinions on this generation seem to fall into the ubiquitous favorite category, so my opinions on this gen might be a little basic. Starting us off with the normal type, we have Eevee. Eevee, in my eyes, is the definition of well-rounded. Not only is it adorable and decently useful on its own in early game, but the sheer variety of evolutions it gets makes it one of the most versatile early game Pokemon in any generation. Definitely my favorite normal type of this region. For my favorite fire type, I have Charizard. This is admittedly the basic bitch option, but honestly, I don't care. Charizard is popular for a reason, because they are simply that cool. Sure, it would be nice if the other Gen 1 starters got attention, but I can see why Charizard gets so much attention. For the water type, my favorite this gen is Gyarados. I've always liked Gyarados because it always feels like an investment. I pick up this functionally useless Pokemon, get them up to par with the rest of my team, and now they have evolved into one of my team's heavy hitters. It may be a little gimmicky after all these years, but I still really appreciate it, and I still really love Gyarados. For the grass type, finally breaking away from the public consensus, I have Vileplume. While Venusaur definitely has the edge in status and cool factor, Vileplume is just such a comfy Pokemon for me. It has a really cute design, it's decent in the games from my experience, and overall it's just super nice. For the electric type, in the next instance of me not beating the basic bitch allegations, we have Pikachu, but in this case I don't think anyone can blame me. Pikachu isn't just a Pokemon. Pikachu is Pokemon. Adorable, iconic, decently powerful in early to mid game, and the mascot of the series? Yeah, Pikachu is definitely my favorite Gen 1 electric type. No contest. For my favorite Gen 1 ground type, I gotta go with Nidoking. While Nidoking definitely gets its flowers in Gen 1, I don't think Nidoking gets enough credit in Pokemon as a whole. After all of these decades, its design still holds up really well, and it is a really good Pokemon to use in my experience. Even after all these years, Nidoking continues to reign as one of my favorite ground types ever. For my favorite Gen 1 rock type, I personally have to go with Rhydon. Rhydon this dick! While their design is on the more basic side of things, as is the trend with a lot of early gen Pokemon, they're still distinct and look great for a Gen 1 Pokemon. Moreover, the thing that elevates them for me is their role on Giovanni's team, having 2 OHKO moves to further emphasize that Giovanni is not messing around anymore. Overall, Rhydon is easily my favorite rock type of this generation. For the steel type of Generation 1, I have to go with Magneton. Now, this is the first instance of a trend with this video format. Since I'm covering one Pokemon of each type from each generation, that means that some types and generations only have one evolutionary line for that type. For specifically Generation 1, since Steel type wasn't a thing yet, they converted Magnemite and Magneton from pure electric types into electric Steel types in Gen 2, and they're the only 2 Steel types in Generation 1 by that logic. As is, they are not bad, but I also don't have any other options. For the Gen 1 Ice type, I personally really like Lapras. This has always been a super fun Pokemon for me. Not only do I really like their move pool, with Parasong being insanely rewarding to pull off, but I also like how in Pokemon X, Lapras is the only Pokemon with a unique surf animation. It's really weird and arbitrary, but I honestly kinda like it. Overall, just a super nice Pokemon. For my favorite Gen 1 flying type, I have to go with Pidgeot. Now, full disclosure, I'm not the biggest fan of Pidgeot when it comes to the other regional birds, but regardless, Pidgeot has a lot of special value, being the first ever. Plus, their Megaform picks up a lot of the slack. Overall, not my favorite regional bird, but still my favorite flying type of this generation. In the bug type for this generation, I have Beedrill. Gen 1 has a lot of decent bug types, but Beedrill is far and away my favorite. The lance-like arms it has, the general feeling of menace, and just everything about it from a design aspect really works for me. Additionally, the Mega takes all of what I just said and cranks it up to 12. Super cool design and stands out as a Gen 1 Pokemon that holds up to this day. For the poison type, I have to go with Arbok. Ever since I was young, I have always had a fascination towards snakes, and to this day they are one of my favorite animals. In my mind, Arbok is the snake Pokemon, so I love them a lot for that reason. They aren't super elaborate or even that special, but they don't need to be. I love them regardless. For my favorite psychic type this generation, I have Mewtwo, and they absolutely cooked for one of their first legendary Pokemon ever. Mewtwo's lore is great, their movie is great, they're strong in game, they're one of my favorite pocket picks in Smash Bros. Whenever I'm not actively being a degenerate playing Plant. They're just perfect. For the Gen 1 fighting type, I have Machamp. Hitmonchan is a close second, but Machamp is just so cool. I don't really have a good explanation for them as I do other Pokemon on this list other than thing is cool, but for Machamp, that is more than enough for me. For the ghost type of this generation, hold on. Shit, Gengar it is. Jokes and limited options aside, Gengar is easily one of the most iconic ghost types in this series. A bit of that can be chalked up to Gen 1 veteran status, but given the fact that it keeps making comebacks like a certain other 2D dead purple character, Gengar continues to be a standout ghost type Pokemon even to this day. I don't have as much attachment to it as I do other ghost types, but credit where it's due, Gengar is a damn good one. For the Gen 1 dark type, my favorite has to be... Oh. I see. For the dragon type, much like Gengar, I only have one option for an evolutionary line, but I have actual motivation behind this one because I absolutely love Dragonite. Dragonair is a super close second given my love for snakes, but Dragonite is just iconic for me at this point. They're great in the game, they're great in the anime, and they were one of, if not my very first event Pokemon that I participated in at my local GameStop back when I was still in elementary school. Even though Gen 1 is slim pickings, Dragonite is still my choice for my favorite dragon type of this generation. And finally, my favorite Gen 1 fairy type is Jigglypuff, but not because of anything in any of the Pokemon games. Rather, my favorite fairy type is Jigglypuff because of Smash Bros, especially her connection to the player Hungrybox. For more info, I would recommend this video by EmpLemon if you somehow haven't seen it already. It's truly fascinating stuff and a great video in its own right. Overall, for Generation 1, my favorite Pokemon this gen has to be Dragonite. From basically everything except for a lore standpoint, Dragonite is easily the Gen 1 Pokemon that I have the most fondness towards. In a sea of great Pokemon from the first generation, Dragonite stands out as a uniquely special Pokemon for me. Next up we have Generation 2, and full transparency, I don't care for this Pokedex as much as other generations. I don't hate or dislike it, I just have absolutely no feelings whatsoever towards most of these 100 Pokemon. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to Gen 2 fans, these games are still good, and most of the Pokemon I picked are still good. This dex just isn't for me. There are a few exceptions, however, so let's see who I actively like in this region. And up first for the normal type, we have exception number 1. Furret is my favorite Gen 2 normal type, and one of my top 3 Pokemon from the generation. Is it because they're good in game? No, not especially. Is it because of their design? Not really. So then, why? Why do I love this little guy so much? I kid you not, I am not a cat video kind of person, but I am a Furt Walk video type of person. Anytime I see one of these videos with a reasonable runtime, I immediately watch it with no hesitation. I absolutely love these serotonin videos, and I love this serotonin Pokemon. For the Gen 2 fire type, my favorite is Entei. Entei is my favorite of the legendary beasts, and I have a lot of nostalgia for specifically Entei, since I used to have an Entei card that I really liked when I was into the Pokemon trading card game in elementary school. While they aren't super complex from a design standpoint, they are probably the Gen 2 Pokemon I have the most personal attachment to, and as such, they are my favorite fire type of this generation. For the Gen 2 water type, my favorite of this gen is Feraligatr. Credit where it's due, Feraligatr is definitely my favorite fully evolved starter of the region. That isn't saying much because Feraligatr is still kind of basic in my opinion, but hey, top of the list is top of the list. For the grass type this generation, I have Celebi. Now Celebi doesn't have as much staying power for me as a mythic as other Pokemon do in my opinion, but regardless, I still like them a lot. They have a super cute design, I remember liking them in the movie, and overall they're pretty decent. Not a lot to hate here, but a decent amount to enjoy. For the Gen 2 electric type, I have Lantern. Even though anglerfish are really goddamn freaky in the real world, they managed to turn that abomination into a generally cute and wholesome design. Add in a surprisingly fun and useful typing, and this is a pretty good Pokemon for me. For the ground type this generation, Wooper! Wooper! Fucking look at them, it's Wooper! Wooper! For the Gen 2 rock type, easily my favorite is Tyranitar. While I maintain Gen 2 overall has a pretty underwhelming dex, with this Pokemon and this next one, they absolutely cooked. This large, Godzilla-esque titan of a Pokemon is easily one of my favorite pseudo-legendaries in the game, and it's paired with a really cool looking Mega Evolution. Also to Tyranitar's benefit, but it happens to be the mascot of a personal favorite Pokemon YouTuber that I watch, which definitely helps add some fondness to it. Overall, really fantastic. In the Steel type for Gen 2, my favorite is easily Scizor. They took a relatively mediocre Pokemon from the first gen and gave it the glow up of the century. Super cool design, decently strong in game, and overall just a really good Pokemon. Add in on top of that, unlike some of the other previous Pokemon, it is both competitively viable on its own and competitively viable in its killer Mega Evolution form. Overall, phenomenal Pokemon, and let's see if Gen 2 can keep this momentum going. For the Gen 2 Ice type, my favorite has to be Delibird. No, really, it has to be. Pickings are super slim here. For the Flying type, I have Skarmory. Skarmory is just a super solid Pokemon all around. Good type, good design, using it is pretty fun, and really there's nothing I can complain about except for maybe its stat distribution if I feel like nitpicking. I'm not super in love with it like I see a lot of other people, but I still like Skarmory. It is a good choice for the Flying type of Gen 2. For the Bug type, I have Ariados. For the Gen 2 Poison type, I have Crobat. This is one of the most popular Gen 2 Pokemon, and honestly, I totally see it. They managed to improve upon Golbat and turn it into an actually cool looking Pokemon. Big props. There isn't much to compliment beyond it looking cool in my personal opinion, but it's still a good Pokemon. For the Gen 2 Psychic type, my favorite has to be Espeon. Even beyond Gen 1, the evolutions continue to be incredibly memorable Pokemon. While Espeon is on the lower end of my favorite evolutions, they are still great and an easy choice for my favorite Psychic type this generation. For my favorite Gen 2 Fighting type, I have Hitmontop. Now, I actually really like the concept of Hitmontop, combining Capoeira with a spinning top. That's a really creative idea, especially for a Gen 2 Pokemon. It's not my favorite of the Hitmon line, but still, its design and concept are really strong. For the Gen 2 Ghost type, we have Misdreavus.
By default, my favorite way to win!
For the Gen 2 Dark type, my favorite has to be Umbreon. A lot of the same logic as Espeon applies here, except Umbreon is on the high end of my favorite evolutions. I think the design is a lot more concise while still being on par with the other evolutions, and fitting the evolutionary method much better. It is the easy choice for my favorite Dark type this generation. For our Dragon type, we have Kingdra.
By default, my favorite way to win!
And finally, for my favorite Gen 2 Fairy type, I have Togepi. It is simply just because they are adorable and they were adorable in the anime. That's it. That's where the logic ends. Overall, for my favorite Gen 2 Pokemon, I have Entei. Again, a lot of it is personal nostalgia, but I really love Entei. It's not a logic-based decision by any means, but it's my video, so... Next up, we have Gen 3, which has the best, most even starter trio in the series, some of my favorite legendaries in the series, and a bunch of really solid Pokemon in the middle. I can't confidently say that this is my favorite Pokedex in the series, but it is definitely up there. Starting off with the normal type, my favorite Gen 3 normal type Pokemon is Delcatty. Good news, everyone! This is the one and only obligation pick of this region, and even then, Delcatty is still decent in my eyes. Competitively, it is not it, but it's cute and I like cats, so it evens. For the Gen 3 Fire type, I have Blaziken. Originally, when I got into the series, I thought Blaziken was a bit overrated, and I resented it a little since it started the trend of 3 firefighting starters in a row, but as the years have gone by, I've slowly warmed up to Blaziken to the point where I finally get the love and hype for this Pokemon. Their design is the right middle ground between distinct but not overly complicated, their Mega is stupidly powerful, and overall, while my favorite Gen 3 starter was Sceptile, nowadays I think I actually love Blaziken more. In general, I've realized that Gen 3 has my favorite starter lineup in this series, and Blaziken leads the pack on that front. Really good stuff. For the Water type, I have Milotic. While I do love Swampert, and I still maintain that Gen 3 has the best starter trio in this series, Milotic just has my heart. A super beautiful and regal Pokemon, plus, again, I love snakes. Milotic's design is just peak. For the Gen 3 grass type, my favorite is Sceptile, and moreover, Sceptile used to be my favorite Gen 3 starter in general. Over the years, I've started to lean more in favor of Blaziken, but Sceptile holds a special place in my heart. They have a really cool design, they were the GOAT in the Hoenn anime, design-wise they are my favorite mega of the three, and they have a decent helping of nostalgia with them. Overall, they are just a really great Pokemon. For the electric type of Gen 3, I have Manectric. This could be considered an obligation pick since I don't really care for Plusle or Minun, but on its own, Manectric is still good. Cool design, cool mega, fun to use, overall just really solid. For the Gen 3 ground type, my favorite has to be Groudon. Oh boy, when I tell you Omega Ruby gave this legendary the glow up of the century, if we're going solely off of the original games, Groudon would still be my favorite, albeit to a much lesser extent. However, factoring in the remakes, Groudon is easily my favorite. Their new signature move, Precipice Blades, is one of my favorite move animations in this series, as well as being pretty powerful by itself, and their new form is amazing. Before, Groudon was just a pure ground type with the ability Drought to reduce water damage, but now they have a primal form where they are a fire ground type, which gives them only two weaknesses, one being to ground and one being to water. However, in this primal form, they have the ability Desolate Land, which activates special weather that fully negates water type moves and cannot be changed by anything other than Kyogre or Rayquaza. It is such a good progression of power, and it fully cements Groudon as a strong, unique Pokemon. What? Kyogre gets an ability that fully negates fire type moves? The moves that they were already resistant to? Yeah, okay. Whatever. For the rock type, I have Aggron. This is literally just Rhydon, but cooler. I don't have much of a justification beyond that. It is just Rhydon, but cooler. For the steel type, shocking I hope nobody, I have Metagross. Great design, great shiny, great competitively, insane lore, and a great mega design. Yeah, it's Metagross. Literally, who else? For the Gen 3 Ice type, I have Glalie. Glalie is easily one of the stupidest, dumbest looking Pokemon in this series, one of the dumbest looking Megas in this series, a complete waste of a Mega slot, and I kinda love it for that? Don't get me wrong, would it be better to have an actually good design for a Pokemon? Sure. Would it have been better to give literally anyone else a Mega Evolution? Of course. But a goofball Pokemon here and a goofball Pokemon there will always be appreciated. For my favorite flying type this generation, easily my favorite is Rayquaza. It's fucking Rayquaza. Not only does it have one of the best core designs, not only does it have one of the best mega designs, not only are both of its shinies even better than the original, not only is Mega Rayquaza one of, if not the strongest mega evolution ever, but Rayquaza is also one of my favorite legendaries ever. It's fucking Rayquaza. Literally, who else? For my favorite Gen 3 bug type, I have Shedinja. This is honestly my favorite gimmick Pokemon of all time. 1 HP, but an ability that makes it untouchable except for super effective moves, i.e. 5 out of 18 types. Shedinja even has an even better Hackmon strategy where they give Shedinja Sturdy, which allows it to survive any move with 1 HP to spare, i.e. max HP. Neither of these strategies are perfect since Shedinja can still be killed by status effects and weather, but that doesn't detract from just how silly they are. A goofball here and a goofball there. For the Gen 3 poison type, I have Seviper. Plus, again, I love snakes. For my favorite Gen 3 psychic type, I have Deoxys. While Mewtwo is often the first Pokemon people think of when they think psychic type legendary, and for good reason, I don't think Deoxys gets nearly enough credit and love in my opinion. They are a really cool Pokemon playing off of genetic code and altering themselves to different forms to have different stat spreads, and overall they're just a super underrated Pokemon. Deoxys really deserves more love. For my favorite Gen 3 fighting type, I have Breloom. While I do think Breloom is a tiny bit overrated, it's hard to argue any of the points against it. Its design is good, Effect Spore is a really fun ability, and overall it's just a really solid Pokemon. Okay, a small update. I wrote this video before the United Healthcare CEO shooting, and before it was revealed that Luigi Mangione's favorite Pokemon was Breloom. Yeah, fuck 12, I don't know what else to say. For the Gen 3 Ghost type, I have Sableye. Sableye is just such a funny little dude. Man, Gen 3 has a lot of goofy Pokemon, a lot of goofballs, a lot of sillies. For the Dark type, I have Absol. While not one of my favorite Pokemon to use, both of its designs are killer, having the right amount of grace and coolness. On top of that, I really like its lore, with Absol being a sign of disasters to come. Absol is a dark type not because it is evil, but because it represents the evil that is to come, and I think that's really cool. For my favorite dragon type this generation, I have Flygon. You listen here, Game Freak. I don't care if Gen 3 has passed. I don't care if Gen 3 remakes have passed. If Flygon doesn't get a Mega Evolution in Legend CA, there will be hell to pay. Give us Mega Flygon, you fucking cowards. And finally, for the Gen 3 Fairy type, I have Gardevoir. Gardevoir just has such a nice design, but my favorite thing about them is their lore. Quote from Pokemon X: "To protect its trainer, it will expend all of its psychic power to create a small black hole." They straight up gave the ability to destroy the planet as we know it to a Pokemon that used to look like that. That is delightful. Eat your heart out, 1 billion lions. If Gardevoir's losing, then we're all losing. That said, for my overall favorite Gen 3 Pokemon, I have to go with Groudon. Seeing the absolutely monumental glow-up that it got in Gen 6 was amazing. Taking what was a pretty meh legendary and turning it into a standout of this series for me. Gotta love Groudon, and I gotta love Omega Ruby. You know, I put off making the Omega Ruby video because I thought, oh, I don't want to make another super long, hour-plus long Pokemon video essay for a while, so I'll just do a simple video about my favorite Pokemon instead. I hate it here. Funnily enough, despite Generation 4 being the only generation that I haven't played, Gen 4 has a very strong Pokedex. Usually with these lists, even with Gen 6, my all-time favorite generation, there's usually at least one Pokemon in each region that I'm picking not because I like them, but because they are just slightly better than the alternatives, or, even barring that, just the only option. Not here though. Each of these Pokemon that I am picking in Generation 4, I am picking them because I genuinely like each of them. While I'm not sure it's the best Pokedex in the game, since there's some pretty steep competition later, the average quality of the Pokemon in this generation is pretty damn high. Starting with the normal type, I have Regigigas. Regigigas is a really interesting Pokemon from a gameplay standpoint. I really like the concept of a Pokemon that has to stay in and survive in order to reach their maximum efficiency, assuming you get that far. Add in some really cool godlike lore of Regigigas, making other Pokemon in its image with the land around him, and pulling continents with its strength, and Regigigas is easily my favorite normal type of this generation. Also, since the normal type is now out of the way, no, there will be no cases where I go, oh, I don't really like any of the ground type Pokemon this generation. Guess I'll pick Arceus Ground. No, none of that. For the Gen 4 Fire type, I have to go with Infernape. This is the second firefighting starter in a row, but Infernape earns it with a very distinct and different design. While Blaziken reminds me a lot of Sentai protagonists, especially with their Mega Evolution, Infernape has a more Chinese Kung Fu based design. The Japanese name for Infernape, Gokazaru, takes this even further, hearkening to Sun Wukong of Journey to the West. So in practice, while both Blaziken and Infernape have a similar type, Infernape is a lot more distinct and intentional with its theming in my opinion, which I really appreciate. Add on the fact that Infernape is super fun to use, and this is one of the standout Pokemon of the region for me. For the water type of this generation, I have Empoleon. Empoleon is just great. In general, I think each of the starters in this generation are really strong. While Infernape is pretty handedly my favorite, I can see the appeal of each of the Gen 4 starters, especially Empoleon. Great design, great type matchup, and in Gen 9 it got a different hidden ability which helps it lean further into its move pool and special attack stat. Overall, Empoleon is great and my easy pick for the Gen 4 water type. For this generation's grass type, my favorite is Roserade. While Torterra and Leafeon are way more popular choices from what I've seen, I think a lot of people sleep on Roserade. Not only is their design downright gorgeous and their shiny variant arguably even better, but they are also decently strong in their own right. I even used one in my most recent playthrough of Pokémon X that I did for my Pokémon X video essay, and they were great. Roserade is not just my favorite of all the grass types this generation, but they're one of my favorites of Generation 4 in general. They are criminally underrated in my opinion. For the Gen 4 electric type, I have Luxray. Not only is Luxray one of my favorite Gen 4 electric types, but they are also one of my favorite electric types in the entire series. Okay, God, I'm starting to notice a pattern with this generation. They really hit it out of the park with this one. Great design, fun to use, really fun lore with Luxray having X-ray vision, a nice evolution on real-world Katz's enhanced sight, and it all just works super well for me. This is one of the most popular Pokemon in Gen 4, and it's easy to see why. For the Generation 4 ground type, I have— oh god, not again. Not only is Garchomp easily my favorite ground type of this generation, but they are also one of the most consistently strong pseudo-legendaries in the game from a competitive standpoint. It is absolutely insane to me how good Garchomp was on release, and how good they continue to be throughout the years, even with the existence of Fairy-type kicking in a lot of other Dragon-type Pokemon. Add in a really sick design and attach their champion to them, Garchomp is an easy standout for the best ground type of this generation. For the Gen 4 rock type, I have Rhyperior. They did it. They put more Rhydon in my Rhydon. Now I have more Rhydon per square Rhydon. Amazing. For the Gen 4 Steel type, my favorite has to be Dialga. The Generation 4 legendaries cooked this time around, with my favorite of all three being Dialga. Their design is great, the Steel Dragon type is amazing in combat, and they're overall just one of the best legendaries in the series. For the Ice type of this generation, it was actually a pretty hard choice. Ice type is usually a pretty feast or famine type in any given Pokedex, but this generation is stacked with really good ice types. Overall though, I have to give this win to Frostlass. Really pretty design, really underrated shiny, really dark dex entries, and overall just a massive upgrade to Glalie. How it got the Mega Evolution over Frostlass is beyond me, but regardless, Frostlass is amazing. For my favorite flying type this generation, I have to go with Shaman Sky. Ignoring the fact that Shaman is a little bitch in their movie, Shaman Sky is a really nice design. To me, it seems like a cool middle ground between a Pegasus and one of Santa's reindeer. Plus, the red leaf scarf is a nice touch. Overall, if you ignore the movie, please ignore the movie, Shaman is great. For the Gen 4 bug type, I have Vespiquen. Such a cool Pokemon, and I really like that she gets 3 different unique moves for attack, defense, and healing, and all of them are themed around her commanding her hive. Such a great piece of theming that really elevates Vespiquen in my opinion, making her an easy choice for my favorite Gen 4 bug type. For the poison type, I have Toxicroak. There is not much behind this decision. Great design, fun to use, GG, shake my hand. For Gen 4 Psychic type, my favorite is easily Gallade. They took Gardevoir, a Pokemon that I already loved from last generation, and made such a sick alternative. Fucking crap. Their general design combined with their elbow blades are really cool to me, and I love using them whenever I get the chance. Also, I know it doesn't factor in much nowadays, but their mega design is even better and one of my favorite megas in the series. Overall, an excellent Pokemon. For the Gen 4 fighting type, I want you to take a wild guess. Yes, I know I kind of process of eliminationed myself into this pick, but Lucario is easily my favorite fighting type in this generation. And honestly, I feel like I can just cut it there. Everyone knows why Lucario is beloved. great design, great lore, great theme, great in-game, and a so-so Smash rep. They've looked worse. For my favorite Gen 4 Ghost type, I have Dusk Noir. Such a cool design combined with really great dex entries, stuff like them receiving radio signals to take people to the afterlife, with conflicting reports on whether or not it's good intentioned or not. The lore behind Dusk Noir is already great, but add in their design and the fact that they're fun to use, and Dusk Noir is easily my favorite Ghost type of this generation. For the Gen 4 Dark type, I have Darkrai. The quintessential nightmare Pokemon, Darkrai is so great. Its design is simple, but I think that's to its benefit. Having a black and smoky design always came across to me like it could easily transform into someone's worst fear. Or it could be a Mimikyu situation, where its form is obscured by this smog, and when it's revealed, that's what causes the psychological damage. Add in the fact that, despite being the Lord of Nightmares, that Darkrai never actually intends any harm, and this is easily one of my favorite Dark types in the series. Second to last for the Dragon type, I have Giratina. Each of the core Gen 4 legendaries are great, and Giratina is among that greatness. I haven't played the main Gen 4 games, but I have seen Giratina's entrance in Platinum out of context, and it is chilling. And in Pokemon Legends Arceus, the two-phase fake-out with Giratina as the final Pokemon in Volo's fight is easily my favorite moment in the game. With two great designs, great lore, and great in-game presence, Giratina is easily my favorite dragon type of this generation. And finally, for my favorite Gen 4 fairy type, I have Togekiss. While this is an easy decision given the fact that its only competition is Mime Jr. and Arceus Fairy, Togekiss is great. I have really fond memories training one up back during the post-game in Gen 6, and ever since it has stuck in my head as a great fairy type Pokemon. Great design, fun to use, nostalgia, and a lack of true competition makes Togekiss my favorite Gen 4 fairy type. But overall, for my favorite Gen 4 Pokemon, I have to give it to Roserade. I know it's an out there pick in a sea of other great Pokemon, but Roserade just really resonates with me. Great design, fun to use, personal history, it's all there. Roserade is seriously underrated in my opinion, and I am more than happy to die on this hill. Guys, between this and my Pokemon X video, I swear I'm not trying to be a contrarian or anything. I just have really weird preferences, I swear. To this day, Gen 5 has the most new Pokemon in a game for a single region, beating out even the very first generation. While the distribution is a lot wider than most generations, having a lot of hits and a lot of misses, there are some definite bangers in Gen 5, with a really solid dex overall. Starting off with Generation 5's normal type, my favorite has to be Meloetta. Now while I haven't used Meloetta much, I've always loved their opera singer design, and they were one of my favorite characters in the Black and White anime. They aren't my favorite mythical Pokemon, hell, they aren't my favorite mythical Pokemon of this generation, but they are still a memorable Pokemon for me. Plus, hey, the official shiny just dropped for it. Look at this new shiny. Please ignore the massive internal leak that's spreading like wildfire. New Meloetta! New Meloetta! For the Gen 5 Fire type, my personal pick is Chandelure. This is one of the most popular Pokemon of this generation, and honestly, it deserves it. Chandelure is such a cool Pokemon, from everything ranging from their design, color scheme, lore, and their good in-game. Chandelure is a complete package and the easy standout as my favorite fire type of this region. For my favorite water type of this generation, I'm picking Duat. Not Samurott, mind you, Duat. This is a pretty cold take, but Duat is far and away the best mid-stage evolution of any of the Pokemon starters. Even with some of the most popular starters like Blaziken, Greninja, and even Decidueye, they still have some pretty mediocre or even just downright bad mid-evolutions, but not Duat. They are genuinely a cool Pokemon, and I would argue they are even cooler than Samurott. While this isn't my favorite starter line of the region, Duat alone more than justifies the hype that this line gets. Really solid stuff. For the grass-type Pokemon of this gen, my favorite is Serperior. Now, I just gushed over Duat and how Samurott's line is more than deserving of all the hype it gets, so why is Serperior my favorite over them? Well, on top of having a really good hidden ability, On top of having a really good hidden ability, well, why are we your favorite? Are we just a nostalgia bias pick aided by the fact that we're a snake?
Oh my god, we are.
For my favorite Gen 5 electric type, I have Galvantula. For most of this video, I've been using a site called Ranker to determine whether or not my pick for any given Pokemon type was controversial or popular, mainly just for my own curiosity, and I was shocked, haha, to see Galvantula so high. I feel like in terms of Gen 5 Pokemon, I never hear them come up. Regardless, Galvantula is great. They're a pretty fast special attacker that I always have fun using. Plus, added bonus, but their shiny is sick. I love how the lighter purples shift down to dark navy blues and blacks. It's such a cool design. For the ground type of this generation, I have Golurk. Golurk is just a really solid Pokemon, but their design and lore reminds me a lot of the Iron Giant. This is added by the fact that Golurk can fly?
Oh, they fly now!
They fly now?
Boy, if you don't get the fuck out my face.
For the Gen 5 Rock-type Pokemon, my favorite is Gigalith. I don't know why, but I've always had a soft spot for this Pokemon line. I like their design, especially the mid-stage evolution that looks like Prism Break from Skylanders, and their shiny variant is also really nice. The shiny in particular is special to me because that's the first shiny that I ever encountered in any Pokemon game. It ended up dying to a crit, and I've never let my 10-year-old self live that down, but moving on. It's one of Gen 5's many Pokemon where they just take a thing, slap eyes on it, and send it to the publisher, but I don't know, this one just works for me, even in spite of its simplicity. For the Steel type of this generation, I have Genesect. Genesect is goddamn incredible. Their moveset is really fun, their design is peak, their lore is peak, and their motive is really fascinating, with this group of Genesects lashing out at humanity after being brought back from the dead and turned into cyborgs. It's only when Mewtwo, a legendary with a similarly traumatic experience, comes in to not just beat it, but also persuade the group away from violence. I don't really go to the Pokemon anime movies for good writing, but this is actually good stuff. Genesect is easily my favorite Steel type of this generation, but also one of my favorite mythical Pokemon ever. Every single aspect about it is amazing. For the Gen 5 Ice type, I have Cubchoo, mainly because, oh, look at them, they're so small and adorable. Oh, they got like that little, oh man, I just want to give them a hug, man. For my favorite Gen 5 Flying type, I have Braviary. Now, I'm not really a patriotic person, both because of America's past and its present, but goddamn, every time I see a bald eagle, or whenever the US wins at the Olympics, all I can think is,
oh, way down south in the land of traitors.
And we most definitely regret the Corps just blew up our raggedy-ass fleet. Hoorah!
God bless America. For the Gen 5 Bug type, I have Escavalier. I really love the gimmick of Escavalier and Excelgor, being Pokemon with pre-evolutions that trade aspects when traded with each other. That is such a cool concept that I would absolutely love to see done more often. Of the two though, Escavalier is my favorite. I think the Cavalry Knight design is so sick, and the fact that it loses a bunch of its speed in favor of defense and attack is a great touch, since its pre-evolution was the faster one of the two. Overall, just a really great Pokemon conceptually, and I would love to see more done with its trading gimmick in the future. For the Poison type, I have Scoilipede. Not only is this just an easy choice amongst Gen 5 Poison types, but this is one of my favorite Poison types ever. Incredible design, ruthless dex entries, and great rep in the anime, Scoilipede is an instant classic and a standout of the generation for me. An easy choice for my favorite Gen 5 Poison type, and we will be coming back to it later, just you wait. For the Psychic type, I have Victini. Gen 5 has a lot of Psychic types, but to me, Victini just had to win. Get it? Victini has a really fun design with its signature V, a set of wings that harken to the Greek goddess of victory Nike, and on top of all of that, Victini is just plain fun to use. Victini is my favorite Gen 5 Psychic type, as well as one of my favorite mythics in the entire series. Much like its secondary type, Gen 5 is on a hot streak. For the Fighting type of this For this generation's fighting type, they named a Pokemon Sock. Fucking sock 'em all. I mean, decent Pokemon, karate's cool, yeah, whatever. Fucking sock. For the ghost type, I have Cofagrigus. While this design is admittedly a bit simple, sometimes less is more. Even though I have already picked 2 out of the 4 ghost type lines earlier in this list, Cofagrigus has a great design and good lore, and frankly, that's enough for me. For the Gen 5 Dark type, my favorite has to be Hydreigon. Of all the types in this generation, Dark is probably the most stacked. Liepard, Crocodile, Zoroark, Bishop, and my favorite among all of them, Hydreigon. While Hydreigon is admittedly not as good as it used to be, since Fairy kinda pummels it into the dirt nowadays, Hydreigon has a great design, great naming theme, great moveset, ruthless dex entries, and a really good association with Ghetsis. In Pokemon Black and White, Ghetsis has a Hydreigon that is several levels under what is required to evolve Zweilous into Hydreigon. This means that Ghetsis forced his Zweilous to evolve early into Hydreigon. To a similar end, the Hydreigon that Ghetsis uses knows the move Frustration, and it is set to max power. This means that without a single line of dialogue, we know that Hydreigon is abused by Ghetsis, and I find that to be really cool. It's also one of the very few instances where Team Plasma has good What? Who said that? Show yourself, coward. Overall though, even though Dark type is insanely stacked this generation, Hydreigon stands as my favorite. For the Gen 5 Dragon type, I have Reshiram, the Pokemon of truth in the box art legendary for Pokemon Black. Okay, fine, whatever. Reshiram has it all. Great design, great theme, great dex entries, and just fun to use. Reshiram is easily my favorite dragon type, and to think, this decision isn't even impacted by nostalgia bias, because I played Pokemon White growing up. Who would have thunk? And finally, for Gen 5's Fairy type, my favorite is Whimsicott. Now, I don't super love Whimsicott like some other people do, but A, I only have 2 options, and both of them are from the same evolutionary line, and B, Whimsicott is still cute, so overall, net positive. But overall, for my favorite Gen 5 Pokemon, I have to give it to Genesect. Genesect is just a complete package for me. Everything about it works to such a high degree that I really have no qualms calling it one of my favorite Pokemon ever. The peaks of Gen 5 are incredibly high, so there were a lot of great options, but out of all of the options presented, Genesect soars above the competition for me. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, when I say nostalgia, you say bias. Nostalgia. Nostalgia. Jokes aside, while this is the smallest Pokedex in the entire series, I still maintain from my Pokemon X video cough that the dex is still a really solid one, with some incredible standouts in the bunch. But what are these standouts? Well, starting off my favorite generation, for the normal type we have Pyroar. Please do not ask me why Pyroar has the normal type, I genuinely have no clue. Regardless, taking a Pokemon as they are, Pyroar is great. A really cool design with a nice male-female distinction, and overall just a really solid Pokemon. They get a little choked out by the competition, with Fletchling and Charmander both being readily available very early into the game, but Pyroar on their own is still incredibly solid, even if I still don't know why they put the normal type on this thing. For the Gen 6 Fire type, I have Talonflame. Talonflame, as well as the Fletchling line as a whole, is by far my favorite regional bird in Pokemon. This Fire Falcon no Captain is a great Pokemon throughout any Pokemon run, being fast, powerful, and having 2 great abilities. It is to the point where Talonflame, at least in Pokemon X and Y, is a decent substitute for Charizard in many instances, if you want to pick a different Kanto starter, and don't want to double up on Fire Flying types. Let me say that again. Talonflame stands shoulder to shoulder with Charizard. Easily my pick for my favorite fire type of this generation. Come on. Water type? Gen 6 Pokemon. Do I even need to say it? Do you have any idea? Any idea at all who this is? Basically, kind of one of the best starters in the entire series. Greninja, of course it's Greninja. As I said in my Pokemon X video, this region's quality of starters is not balanced at all, but Greninja is an incredibly high peak for the region. Yes, Greninja, literally who else? For the Gen 6 grass type, my favorite is Skidoo. Full disclosure, I do like Skidoo, and they are cute, but this is one of the 2 obligation picks of this generation. I'm not super big on the Gourgeist line, I'm not looking at them any longer than I have to, and the only other grass type this gen is later in the list. So as such, Skidoo it is. For my favorite Gen 6 electric type, my favorite is Heliolisk. While there are only 2 options for electric type evolutionary lines this generation, Heliolisk is still my personal favorite. A lizard Pokemon who uses its frills as generators, in the process looking like solar panels, is such a neat design, and it is just begging for a Mega Evolution in Legends ZA. Again, I still don't know why Gen 6 tacked the normal type onto this thing, but as is, Heliolisk is a great electric type and my favorite of the generation. For the ground type this generation, my favorite has to be Zygarde.
I know what you're gonna say, Stoic. How could I have done this? Stayed away all of these years, and why didn't I come back to you? I know that I left you to raise Hiccup alone, but I thought he'd be better off without me. And I was wrong. I see that now, but... Oh! Stop being so stoic. Go on. Shout, scream, say something!
You're as beautiful as the day I lost you.
For the rock type of Gen 6, my favorite is Diancie. Diancie in general is one of my favorite mythical Pokemon in the series. The design is super pretty, with the Mega Evolution being just as good visually, and the shiny versions of both of them cranking it up to 11. In terms of usage, I also really love how base Diancie is more defensive and slow, whereas Mega Diancie trades its defense for offense. Add in a really cool signature move, and it is one of my favorite Pokemon to use whenever I can get my hands on one. Fantastic Pokemon, and while it is in the rock type slot, it is also another great addition to the newfangled fairy type, joining the likes of Sylveon and Xerneas as great reps for the new type in their debut game. For the Gen 6 Steel type, so you're never gonna guess who I went with. Aegislash is one of the best Pokemon of this generation in general, being a really cool take on a possessed sword and shield. Add in the fact that it's competitively viable, and its only competition for this type is a ring of keys that somehow has the fairy type on it, and I don't feel like I need to elaborate on this anymore. Aegislash all day, every day, give them a Mega Game Freak, you know you wanna. For the ice type of this generation, my favorite is Aurorus.
Aurora?
For my favorite Gen 6 flying type, my favorite is easily Noivern. Both this sick-ass dragon design that would fit right at home in How to Train Your Dragon, but also it fits the bat theme perfectly. Bats use echolocation for sight, so they fold a bat and a dragon together in order to make a Pokemon whose roar can shatter boulders. Oh yeah. This is it. For the Gen 6 bug type, even though there is only one evolutionary line option, that doesn't matter to me, because Vivillon is one of my favorite regional bugs ever. Sure, they aren't exactly inventing sliced bread, but they are perfecting it, and the different patterns of Vivillon are one of my favorite instances of palette swaps in this series. Each of the patterns are so pretty, and I especially love the icy snow, marine, and meadow patterns. Yeah, I'm kind of forced to pick it, but put it against every single other region, and 9 out of 10 times I am picking Vivillon. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. Vivillon clears Butterfree. For my favorite poison type of this generation, my favorite has to be Mega Beedrill. They took an already sick design from Generation 1 and enhanced it even further. Sorry, hang on one sec. Hello? What do you mean Mega Beedrill doesn't count as a full Pokemon? Yeah, I know it's only available for 2 generations, but it... Oh, come on, it is so different than picking something like Shadow Lugia. Okay, you know what? It's fine. I'm not gonna argue about this. Gen 6's Pokedex is small, but there are other options for poison types. I'll pick something else, okay? Okay. Thank you. Alright, bye-bye. Okay. What else is there? Sure, fuck it, Dragalge's cool too. For my favorite Gen 6 Psychic type, my favorite is Meowstic. This Pokemon follows a similar logic as Pyroar does, but the difference is, this one doesn't have the normal type for no reason. While they are only kinda good in early to mid game, Meowstic is just a really solid Pokemon overall, with great, simple, and concise designs for both male and female variants. Additionally, the fact that male Meowstic has a more defensive and supportive moveset, while females have a more offensive moveset, is just another distinction that I love. Overall, I really like this pure, only singular Psychic type Pokemon. For this generation's fighting type, my favorite has to be Hawlucha. Alright, Gang Freak, what if, and hear me out on this, we made a super cool fighting flying type Pokemon, a type combo that we have never done yet, make this Pokemon themed around luchadors, and give it a unique move that is the first dual type move in the game's existence. Alright, now stay with me here. What if, after Pokemon X and Y, we do absolutely nothing with this Pokemon or this unique move concept ever again! For the Ghost type this generation, I have Trevenant, who I think is a very underrated Pokemon. Not only are its dex entries really interesting, specifically the entries for Pokemon Y, Sun, and Violet, but also I have a personal connection to this Pokemon. There's a trope in horror movies where a character will see a hand-like shadow on their window and assume it's a monster of some kind, only for it to just be an inconveniently shaped tree branch. For most of my life, I've lived next to a pretty big woods area, and my bedroom window faces out towards those woods. So when I was younger and it was super windy, I could hear the branches clattering against each other, and it would always give me the creeps, even more so if it was storming. All of this to say, Trevenant is a really interesting Pokemon to me, and it is my easy pick for this generation's Ghost type. For the Dark type of Gen 6, my favorite is definitely Hoopa Unbound. Such a sick design, added by this really cool mashup between portals and genies. Sure, the Hoopa movie is kind of awful, but Hoopa Unbound themselves is incredible. Not much to say here, just really great. For this generation's Dragon type, as much as I really love Tyrantrum, and as much as it pains me to pass them up on both of their types, I have to go with Goodra. This may be nostalgia talking, but Goodra is one of my favorite dragon types ever. There are some dragon types that are just straight up dragons with not a lot of interesting choices behind them, and there are some dragon types that are just demonstrably not a dragon. But Goodra sits in this really nice middle ground, with slimes being close enough to that dragon theming while also being unique and distinct. Add in their greatness in the anime and their decent in-game potential, and a few doses of nostalgia bias, and Goodra is my easy pick for this generation's dragon type. And lastly, for this generation's fairy type, I have Xerneas. In my mind, much like how Pikachu isn't just a Pokemon, but Pikachu is Pokemon, Xerneas is the same thing for the fairy type for me. It is the fairy type Pokemon. A gorgeously designed, insanely powerful Pokemon with great theming that essentially justified and pioneered the fairy type as a whole. Xerneas is by far my favorite fairy type of this generation, as well as one of my favorite legendaries to date. For my favorite overall Pokemon in Gen 6, I'm really sorry, but I'm also super very not. I have to go with Greninja. Literally my first Pokemon ever, as well as a Pokemon that still holds up to this day as one of the most widely beloved and celebrated Pokemon of all time. Even if I removed all of my personal nostalgia bias from this choice and got into Pokemon X and Y for the first time today, I would still think that Greninja is the best Pokemon of this generation. I'm recording this the next day. I got through, I think, Gen 6 yesterday. It's the next morning, and I have a bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios. They're really good. This is stupid. Why am I doing? In my opinion, Gen 7 is the most well-rounded generation in the series. Anything you could want, this generation has. Great characters, great story, great villains, the best evil team in this series, and of course, a pretty great Pokédex with a solid rep in almost every single type. While there is one obligation pick, the general quality of these Pokemon range from good to favorite in the type. For my favorite Gen 7 normal type, I have Silvally. This is genuinely just an Arceus clone that I prefer more than Arceus. When I call Silvally a clone, I don't mean it in the Pikachu clone sense, where every generation has an electric rodent. I mean that Silvally is literally a man-made Pokemon designed for war, modeled off of Arceus. That said, instead of just being kinda that, Silvally is designed as a chimera, having different body parts from different types of animals, and I think that is so sick. On design and lore alone, this is my favorite normal type of the generation, but add in the fact that they're fun to use, and Silvally is one of my favorite normal type Pokemon, period.
Oh yeah!
Of course, my favorite fire type of this generation is Incineroar. While the design isn't super out there, and you can tell Game Freak was really holding themselves back from making a fourth firefighting dual type starter, they're still an incredible Pokemon. Not only are they a competitive monster, but they also have great rep outside of Pokemon like in Smash Bros. In my opinion, overall, Incineroar isn't the greatest starter of all time, but they are definitely among the greats. Up next for our water type, my favorite of this generation is Primarina. Just this really pretty mermaid Pokemon with a solid beginning and middle stage evolution. Honestly, one of the better water type starters of this series. The water fairy type also lends itself really well to the theming, and overall they're just a really great Pokemon. Probably my least favorite of these starters, but that's not saying much because they are still great. The last two Pokemon of this list have been starter Pokemon, and honestly, I saved the best for last. Decidueye. Easily my favorite starter of these three, as well as from any Pokemon game ever. Going from a sweet round orb boy to this sick owl archer who uses their wings and the drawstring of their cloak to make a bow and uses their feathers as arrows, like, what? This is one of the sickest designs for any Pokemon in the entire series, and it fully leans into the elaborate and fantastical side of Pokemon that I love. When the series has a bunch of Pokemon that just are the animal that they're based on, having something this unique is an honest-to-God treat. While it isn't the most competitively viable starter in the region, Incineroar corners most of that market, this is my favorite of the region. An amazing cap off to my second favorite starter trio in the series. For my favorite Gen 4 electric type, I have Tapu Koko. In my opinion, Tapu Koko is the best legendary in Gen 7. Its design is cool, its implementation into the story is great, with one of the best and most atmospheric catch opportunities in the game, and overall it's one of the standout Pokemon of Gen 7. Not only is it one of my favorites in the region, it is one of my favorite electric types in this series for me. For the Gen 7 ground type, I have Palossand. This is just a fun Pokemon. Have you ever buried anyone in sand at a beach? Guess what? That person's possessed now. And also, fun note, this sandcastle eats Pokemon, which is fun. Guys, this is just a sandcastle. Why is its lore fucked up? The thing that really elevates this Pokemon for me is its setting. In the most tropical region in this series, they introduced the sandcastle Pokemon. And what's more, its shiny form is all black, harkening to black sand beaches that are common in Hawaii. And that is just amazing. Overall, this Pokemon just has so many small details about it that make it my favorite ground type in this game. For the Gen 7 rock type, my favorite has to be Lycanroc Dusk. Such a cool mix between the two Lycanroc forms from the prior game, and it has one of my favorite Z moves in the entire game. On top of just being plain fun and having a great design, Lycanroc Dusk is also a standout in the Alola anime, an anime that I think is highly underrated. In general, Lycanroc Dusk is not just my favorite rock type of the generation by a landslide, but they are also one of my favorite rock types, period. For my favorite steel type of Gen 7, my favorite is Magearna. They're a really interesting Pokemon, being an artificial Pokemon like Mewtwo, but unlike Mewtwo, they were a gift to royalty, so Magearna was raised with the love and affection that Mewtwo never got. Additionally, their design is really cute while still allowing for cool aspects like their Mega Buster arm. Magearna also has a bunch of different color variants, the normal being all steel gray, with an alt form being red and white like an actual Pokeball. It is a fantastic Pokemon on every single metric, and another great addition to the Steel Fairy dual type.
No, not you, Seamus.
Ah, poo.
For my favorite Gen 7 Ice type, I don't think many will be surprised, but it's Alolan Ninetales. Easily one of the best regional forms of any Pokemon to date, as well as being really pretty and majestic. It's not the best Pokemon competitively, but it doesn't need to be in order to capture my heart. It is probably the most popular Ice type in this series, and I can honestly say that it deserves it. For the flying type of this generation, my favorite is Oricorio. I've always really liked this one, and I especially like how the different variations harken to different styles of dancing from different cultures. My favorite of the four is probably Baile Oricorio, themed after samba dancing from Brazil, and I think the design of Baile Oricorio in general is just my favorite. It reminds me a lot of Rio of all things, and I do mean that as a compliment. Overall though, Oricorio is a really neat Pokemon. For the bug type of this generation, I have Vikavolt. This is such a cool design, having a beetle Pokemon that uses its mandibles like a Halo energy sword and the rails of a railgun. The only flaw that I can think of for this Pokemon is that it is deceptively slow, but if it weren't for that, it would be one of my favorite bug types in the entire series. As it stands though, it is still my favorite bug type of this generation. For the Gen 7 Poison type, I have Toxapex. Now, is this Pokemon competitively really good and viable? Sure. Are they also a silly Billy? Yes. Bet you can't guess why I'm picking them. For the Gen 7 Psychic type, I have Lunala. Much like Reshiram, even though I picked the other legendary of this generation, I have slowly gravitated more towards Lunala as time has gone on. The general design, special move animations,
Necrozma,
form, and playability have all grown on me over these years, to the point where even though it's close, I prefer Lunala over Solgaleo. It was a very close call, but Lunala is my favorite box art legendary and psychic type Pokemon of this generation. For the Gen 7 fighting type, I have Bewear, just an overall solid Pokemon. Good design, good theme, fun to use, pretty good in the anime, and I like it whenever I can get one in Smash. Just an overall solid Pokemon. Also, they're a bear. Take a wild guess why that's important to me specifically. For the Gen 7 Ghost type, I have Marshadow. Take literally everything I just said about Bewear, cut off the part about Bewear being a bear, and that's how I feel about Marshadow. Also a good Pokemon for a lot of the same reasons. For my favorite Dark-type Pokemon of this generation... well shit. I already used Incineroar, and Ash Greninja feels like a cop-out. So, what else is there? I mean, there's Guzzlord for sure, but then there's also the Alolan Pokemon, which could be a viable... Fuck it, Guzzlord it is. For the Gen 7 Dragon type, my favorite is Turtonator. Sure, I know, Necrozma and Nagnadel are also solid options, but I want the funny Mind Turtle, damn it! Hello! Oh. And finally, for my favorite Gen 7 Fairy type, I have to go with Mimikyu. This Pokemon has it all, honestly. Great design, great lore, a nice ability, and it's just a really great Pokemon overall. It breaks my heart to pieces that this little fella just wants to be loved, but rest assured, buddy, I love ya. But for my favorite Pokemon of this generation, while there are a bunch of incredibly solid options, Decidueye stands as one of the most uniquely designed Pokemon in the entire series, and they are my absolute favorite. While most generations have 1 or 2 obligation picks, unfortunately Gen 8 has a fair share of them. When this generation hits, it hits hard, but a lot of the Pokemon from this generation are sadly just okay in my opinion. Not bad, but nothing to write home about. That said, let's see who the standouts are. For my favorite Gen 8 normal type, my favorite is Wooloo. Much like how Furret isn't my favorite Gen 2 normal type on its own merits, but rather for its impact on the internet, Wooloo is my favorite Gen 8 normal type, not on its own merits, but because I fucking hate PETA. When Gen 8 was announced, PETA made a post along the lines of, "I am not your Wooloo sweater," as a part of their anti-shearing campaign. Problem is, sheep need to be sheared or else they will overheat during the hotter months. Plus, an excess of wool can lead to diseases and infestations. As such, people naturally jumped on PETA's ass for this, because, surprisingly, the company with an over 80% euthanasia rate might not know the first thing about animal care. Point being, because PETA made this call-out post using one of the most popular franchises of all time, Wooloo was the catalyst for more people realizing that the fake animal rights group is actually a bunch of grifters at the upper levels. And I am very appreciative of that. For my favorite Gen 8 fire type, I have Cinderace. I am not going to lie, this is solely because of Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso single-handedly sparked my appreciation for football, and honestly, that's why I love Cinderace so much. I swear to God, coming up in this list, there are Pokemon that I actually like for legitimate reasons and not just weird side tangents. For my favorite Gen 8 water type, I have Dracovish. Who gave this funny fish so much power? Who decided that this funny fish is going to be one of the most powerful Pokemon of the generation? Who made this decision, and can I give you a high five? For my favorite Gen 8 grass type, we have Appleton. Look at them. There are no thoughts behind that head. Nary a brain cell has traversed the labyrinth that is Appleton's smoothed out synapses. His body is so full. His head is so empty. He is so beautiful. For the Gen 8 electric type, I have Toxtricity. Awful, disgusting, repugnant pre-evolution aside, I really like Toxtricity. The poison and electric type combination was something I never really thought they could make work, short of just having a corroded battery Pokemon. So to see a punk rock lizard of all things was really unexpected and a great new addition. It's also subtle, but I really like the two variations of Toxtricity. One having 6 strings while the other having 4, which is obviously a bass guitar and a normal guitar. It also adds into the setting, with Galar being based on the UK, and the UK being one of the pioneers of the punk subculture. Plus, in my experience, I've been able to use Toxtricity pretty well, so bonus points for that. Overall, this is one of the most unique, creative, and thematically fitting Pokemon in the entire series, and I love it. For the ground type, I have Runerigus. This takes Cofagrigus from earlier and puts a really neat spin on them. I don't really have much to add to this section aside from they just look cool, but honestly, that's enough. For the Gen 8 rock type, I have Colossal. While not the most complex Pokemon, I think they're a really solid one. I particularly like their gameplay, being this super bulky tank, but I also like their ability Steam Engine, which drastically increases its speed if it's hit by a water-type move. It makes it so that if you don't knock it down in one hit with a water-type move, you've essentially made a monster. Add in the fact that Colossal adds to the industrial setting of the UK-themed region, and it ends up being another surprise on this list. For the Gen 8 Steel type, I have Corviknight. Corviknight is up there as one of my favorite regional birds in this series. It's not quite as high as Talonflame, but it's certainly up there. Great design, killer Gigantamax form, fun to use. This is just Skarmory from earlier, but leagues better in my opinion. One of the greats of this generation, and my favorite Steel type among them. For the Gen 8 Ice type, I have Calyrex Ice Rider. While this is by far my favorite Ice type of the generation, I don't really love it. The only other ice type in this generation that I like is later in the list, and that's because that type has even less options than here. I don't know, Calyrex is fine and all, but it just feels a bit forced. I think they could have done way more with the whole 2 ability shtick it has going on, instead of one of the abilities just being a nerve of all things. Whatever, it's still a net positive Pokemon, but still. For the Gen 8 flying type, we have... Enamorate. Snom, 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 snom. For my favorite Gen 8 poison type, I have Galarian Slowbro. It looks like Mega Man, and... For the Gen 8 Psychic type, I have Hatterene. This isn't one of my all-time favorites, but I still really like it. It's fun to use, it has a nice design, being this small Pokemon that uses its hair for its main body, plus it has a really great shiny. That said, unlike some other Pokemon where the shiny is a strict upgrade or downgrade, the normal colors that Hatterene has going on are still really oh shit, it's the trans flag. I like it because it's the trans flag. For the Gen 8 fighting type, I have Surfetch'd, and oh man, I've been waiting for this. I wanted them to do something with Farfetch'd since forever, and when they revealed Surfetch'd, I was absolutely ecstatic. Such a great design that not only progresses off of base Farfetch'd design really well, but it also ties into the European setting, and it's fun to use. Oh hell yeah, Surfetch'd is my favorite fighting type of this generation, are you kidding? For the Gen 8 Ghost type, easily my favorite is Dragapult. Dragapult is one of my favorite pseudo-legendary Pokemon ever. I love its design, I love using it in-game, I think the Dragon Ghost type is so sick, and the lore is kinda unhinged. Sure, it shoots Dreepy out of its horns as missiles, that's cool enough. But the Dreepy? They want to be shot as missiles. They crave to be used as ammunition in this conflict. They thirst for blood, and they will not rest until they get it. And that's kind of batshit insane. Overall, there's a lot to love with Dragapult. For the Gen 8 Dark type, I have Grimmsnarl. This is admittedly a really creative Pokemon, and I've always liked how it's kind of a mix between a hag and an ogre, both of which come from Old English folklore. It's a really fun way of mixing the Dark and Fairy type. Plus, its Gigantamax form looks like it's ripped straight out of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and that is amazing. Overall though, this is a great new addition to the Fairy type, and easily my favorite Dark type of this generation. For the Gen 8 Dragon type, I have Regidrago. Look at this stupid fucking thing. Its entire body is a mouth. Its HP stat is insanely high with piss poor defenses. Literally can't do anything if it wanted to. So goddamn stupid. But also I kinda love it for that, not gonna lie. And lastly, for my favorite Gen 8 Fairy type, my favorite is easily Zacian. Not only is Zacian stupidly broken in Gen 8, but they are also one of my favorite designs for any box art legendary. I love the design theme of large wolves carrying swords in their mouths, even when they break my heart. Outside of its design, Zacian is a competitive juggernaut in Gen 8, and it's another great addition to the Fairy Steel type. Easily my favorite Fairy type of this generation. That said, for my favorite overall Gen 8 Pokemon, I have to give it to Dragapult. Everything about it just sings to me. I love using it, I love the design, I love the lore, I love them in game. As I said earlier, there's a lot to love with Dragapult. And I do. I love this Pokemon. Generation 9 is one of my least favorite generations in Pokemon, but that's mainly because of disinterest in the plot, characters, as well as problems, you know, playing the game. That said, one of the areas where these games don't fall flat is in its Pokédex, which is legitimately really great, and one of the best in recent history. Some of these Pokemon are not just my favorite among the region or the type, but some of my favorites, period. So with that, let's get to complimenting. For the normal type of this generation, my favorite is Cyclizar. Cyclizar does something rather unique. Since Koraidon and Miraidon are effectively the same Pokemon separated by the past and future, Cyclizar exists as this middle stage between them. We've seen this before with legendaries like Kyurem being the middle ground between Reshiram and Zekrom, or Zygarde being the middle ground between Xerneas and Yveltal, but Cyclizar is a common Pokemon. literally anyone can own a Cyclizar, so the lore of Cyclizar being the modern version of Koraidon and Miraidon both adds to its own identity, while simultaneously making our Koraidon and Miraidon unique in a different way from most of the other box art legendaries. The writing and lore for Cyclizar makes it one of my favorite Pokemon from that standpoint, while also securing itself as my favorite normal type of this generation. For the Gen 9 Fire type, we have Cerulege, and this design is everything to me. In general, I'm a sucker for fire-based power sets, and I'm also a sucker for swords, so this design is perfect to me. Thank you, Kai Lego Ninjago, for shaping my standards of peak character design ever since I was 6. Add in the unique purples and pinks contrasting with the black armor, and this design is top tier for me. On top of having one of my favorite designs of any Pokemon ever, this is also just a generally fun Pokemon to use. Overall, Cerulege is one of my favorite fire types in the entire series, and it is easily my favorite fire type of this generation. I love them tremendously. For the water type of Gen 9, my favorite is Palafin. I like him because it reminds me of superheroes. I like him because it reminds me of All Might My Hero Academia. Yep, that's the bar. For the Gen 9 grass type, I have Meowscarada. When the rumors and leaks for Gen 9 were coming out, I was not excited by the idea that the cat might stand up, and when it did, I was initially pretty disappointed. But, after a while, I really started to appreciate Meowscarada's design and theming. Having this Balan Wonderworld and Jester-like magician design is such an interesting direction to go that I really like it in hindsight. Also, unrelated, but the mid-evolution Floragato is one of the best mid-evos of any starter in the series. Not the best, Duat takes that spot pretty handedly, but Floragato is up there. Overall, Meowscarada is my favorite starter in this gen, and they are easily my favorite grass type of this gen. For the Gen 9 electric type, my favorite is Iron Thorns. They took Tyranitar, one of the relatively few Pokemon in Gen 2 that I actually love, the Pokemon themed around Godzilla, and they made Mecha Pokegodzilla. There's nothing else to say here, they cooked. For the Gen 9 ground type, Paldean Wooper, let's go! It's a different Pokemon, I did not cheat, and besides, fucking look at them, it's Paldean Wooper! Woo! For the Gen 9 rock type, we have Garganacl. This is just silly. This is just a silly Pokemon. Silly name, silly design, silly dex entries, silly, silly, silly. I love this silly little fella. Even though it's probably taller than me. For my favorite Gen 9 steel type, I have Goldango. On top of just being good competitively, Wacky Waving Inflatable Arm Flailing Pokemon, Wacky Waving Inflatable Arm Flailing Pokemon, Wacky Waving Inflatable Arm... For the Gen 9 Ice type, Baxcalibur. Sure. What can I say about Baxcalibur? Okay, look, I really don't like any of the ice types of this generation, and I think Baxcalibur is probably my least favorite pseudo-legendary Pokemon in the entire series. But I need an ice type for this video format, so here we are. For the flying type of this generation, we have Bombardier, who, and I cannot stress this enough, is the most delightfully evil Pokemon concept of all time. Yeah, so anyways, you know the stork? You know the myth about the storks being the ones who deliver babies? The myth that storks carry babies in a cloth wrapping that they carry with their beaks and deliver the babies to parents in want or need of a child? Yeah, wholesome stuff. So anyways, what if that stork intentionally dropped said babies as projectiles for combat and for their own sick pleasure? What if they took the most maternalistic bird in all of nature and just made them into a menace to society? I love this. This is honestly such a batshit insane concept, and honestly, full props to Game Freak. This is delightful. For the Gen 9 bug type, my favorite is Lokix. There is no particular reason for this, except that I saw this art of Lokix that reminded me of Deku My Hero Academia, and I thought it was cool. Yep, that's the bar. For the Gen 9 poison type, my favorite is probably Pecharunt. I really wanted to pick Clodsire for the bit, for the funny, for the memes, but Pecharunt is a solid Pokemon as well. While I think their lore and design are a tad bit basic, their in-game capabilities are really interesting to me. I especially like their ability that causes Pokemon to become confused whenever they're poisoned. Since poison doesn't go away unless you use a cleansing move or medical item, having this double status condition can be really deadly, and I think it adds to Petron's status as a mythical Pokemon. While I do think other legendaries and mythics are better overall, Pecharunt is still a really solid candidate for my favorite poison type of this game. Even if I do like Clodsire better, but hey, rules are rules. For my favorite psychic type of this generation, I have Cerulege's less impressive I have Armarouge. While I love Cerulege infinitely more than I love Armarouge, they are still a good Pokemon in their own right. And I love their Mega Man-esque design that they have. By all accounts, they are the weaker twin for me, but they are still good in their own right. Oh my god. Remember my love for Gallade? Remember how much I adored Gallade? Gallade has absolutely nothing on Iron Valiant, blending together Gardevoir and Gallade's design in this sick futuristic knight design. They took these two Pokemon with already great designs, made it futuristic, and equipped it with a double-sided glaive? What was the Pokemon design team on when they made this, and can I have a hit? This is easily one of my favorite Pokemon designs in the game, to the point where saying it's fantastical isn't even close to describing it. The design would fit right at home in something like Star Wars, and if it were in Star Wars, it would be by far the best droid design in this series. Add in the fact that this Pokemon is a fighting fairy dual type, something completely new to Pokemon, and absolutely they cooked here. This is my favorite fighting type of the generation, this is one of my favorite Pokemon of the generation, and this is one of my favorite Pokemon in the entire series. For the Gen 9 Ghost type, I have hold on.
Sinistcha.
Yeah, that. Poltegeist from Gen 8 was a decent Pokemon, but I did not expect it to get a regional form so soon. What's more, I really like this design. The Clay Cup design and Matcha theme makes for a much more unique Pokemon design in my opinion. While it's not the strongest Ghost-type Pokemon, especially not compared to Fluttermane, I personally get much more enjoyment out of
Sinistcha.
For the Gen 9 Dark-type, absolutely no doubt Kingambit. I already loved Bisharp from Gen 5, and they decided to make an evolution with the most aura possible.
You are surrounded!
All I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men.
For the Gen 9 Dragon type, I have Miraidon. Miraidon this dick! Of the two box art legendaries, I prefer Miraidon the most. I love how they fully embrace the futuristic design and turn Cyclizar into a motorcycle. On top of that, Miraidon feels a lot more unique, whereas Koraidon, while still cool, always felt like Kommo-o 2.0 in my opinion. Overall, Miraidon is my choice for my favorite dragon type of this generation. And finally, the last Pokemon on this list, for the fairy type of Gen 9, we have the murderer of all things avian, Tinkaton. Small body, big weapon, peak character design. Also, goddamn, Gen 6 had one of the most underwhelming Fairy Steel type Pokemon in the series with Klefki, and then every generation afterwards, they just kept cranking out banger Fairy Steel type Pokemon. Good shit. So finally, for my favorite Gen 9 Pokemon, I have Iron Valiant. They went insanely hard with this Pokemon for no reason whatsoever. If it isn't obvious by now, I really appreciate well-rounded Pokemon, and Iron Valiant has it all. Again, my problems with Gen 9 aside, Iron Valiant stands out as one of my favorite Pokemon in the region, and one of my favorite Pokemon in this series. Well, it has all come to this. My favorite Pokemon of each type, as well as the summary lists. Let's finish this. And those are all of my lists. Overall, despite this video being exceedingly longer than I would have liked it to be, I had a lot of fun making this video. I joke about how this video ended up being way more work than I would have anticipated, but ultimately I wouldn't be making videos this long if I didn't have a lot to talk about. In general, I don't make videos about things that I have negative feelings about because I want to add positivity to the world and not discourse. But even barring that, I wouldn't have scripts this long if I didn't have a lot to talk about and praise. Pokémon is one of the series that I'm most passionate about, and I like sharing that passion. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you don't mind me, I will be taking a massive power nap after I stop recording. And as much fun as I've had doing this, I hope I can move on to non-Pokémon videos in the near future. Oh snap, back to the lab again. Oh no, back to the lab again. They messed up. Back to the lab again. Not again. Back to the lab again. Oh no, back to the lab again. Not again. I want to go to bed so bad.